Yeah, so my name's Kaelen. I own two businesses in the hemp space. One of them is Sovereign Vines, the only hemp-infused wine in America. So we've been in the hemp space now for about 3 years in New York. My father, who's also my business partner, has been in the hemp industry since 1996. And our agricultural director, Aldis, has been in cannabis across the country for about 35 years. So we have a lot of experience in hemp. We were the first and only hemp-infused wine company in the United States. We launched that in 2015. And then about a year and a half ago, we launched CSG Hemp, based out of Binghamton. And what we do is pretty much a little of everything. So we have a network of growers, about 20 strong throughout the state. We grow for high cannabinoid content, specifically CBD. We also do consulting, not on the farm side, but for brand development. Helping companies add hemp into their product line. Compliance and regulatory analysis is what I specialize in. So I'm a registered lobbyist. We work closely with the governor's office, with the state senate, and the state assembly. Our assemblywoman is Donald Pardo. She's the chair of the agricultural committee. And met yesterday with Jen Metzger, Senator Jen Metzger, and she's the head of the Senate Agriculture Committee. So what I do a lot of is push for regulations that are going to help protect the New York hemp industry, help small farmers and small businesses, and make sure that the regulations are fair and not too burdensome, to basically allow for only large companies to enter the marketplace. So the regulatory environment surrounding hemp is very confusing, and is why we have a thriving business, especially in New York. So I'm just going to run down. I'm going to kind of talk about the evolution of hemp becoming legal, with the 2014 Farm Bill, legal-ish, I'll say, and then kind of go through the events since 2014 and where we are today, where hemp is completely delisted from the Controlled Substances Act. Well, in statute it is. It hasn't actually been taken off. And how New York State is ramping up their program and looking to submit their plans to the USDA hopefully next year. So it really started in 2014, and we can thank Mitch McConnell for that. Kentucky has a long history of hemp farming, and so, the James Comer, who's a representative in Kentucky now, but he was the agricultural director in Kentucky, kind of brought to Mitch McConnell and said, hey, listen, and Senator Rand Paul said, hey, hemp isn't legal, but I think it could be a cash crop here in Kentucky. Let's see what we can do to kind of open it up. And so in 2014, Section 7606 of the Farm Bill allowed for research into hemp. His research covered a lot of things. Covered cultivation, covered the economics, processing, distribution, just a lot of things. So it allowed states to go and submit these research plans and have what we call a pilot program. And the pilot program is still in effect in New York. Some of the first states to implement a pilot program was Colorado and Kentucky. And so in these pilot programs, you could be a grower, or you could process, or you could market products, but it had to be under the guise of research, and you had to submit to the state every year your research, right? You had to give them your coordinates, which you still do, and allow for the DEA to know exactly where you were growing hemp, which at that point was still a controlled substance. So New York State, in about 2015, Donald Pardo, on the screen here, she basically sponsored a bill. She wrote a bill that would allow for New York State to create a pilot program. And at that time, only universities could get involved. And so what one university, SUNY Morrisville, did is they worked with JD Farms in Eaton, New York, to grow the first actual commercial hemp crop. At that time, you could grow it in New York, but you could not sell it. So they put the seeds in the ground that had to have an armed guard come I had to pay someone from the state police come and watch them plant the seeds into the ground. This is for a grain crop, right? So a pollinated crop, densely seeded to produce grain for food products. JD Farms is run by Dan Dolgan, and they own Fleischer's, which is a butcher shop in Lower Manhattan, and then also in Ithaca. And so they have a direct market farm. They raise a lot of beef, cattle. They have some other grains, organic grains. They have a mill up there in Eaton that they sell direct to market into the city. So they're familiar with, getting a product to the consumer and creating value add product. So they said, okay, we'll take a chance on hemp. We'll use it as a rotation crop, or as a cover crop. Actually, they're looking to use it as a cover crop. And so they put that down, and the day before they put it down, Donald Pardo was able to pass additional legislation which allowed for the marketing of that crop. So they were able to put an outlet on it. So they've now entered their third year of growing. Their first year was pretty successful. Second year wasn't much so, and then last year they really dialed it in. But they were the first, grower in the state. And they had to be connected with a research university or a research partner. The next year, the state said, we'll be the research partner, or we'll be the institution. You need to partner with us to conduct the research. So that opened up. I think they allowed for 10 licenses that year. We actually applied for one because we were already in the program with the wine company. We didn't receive that license. There was a few that received it. One, Southern Tier Hemp, received it through Binghamton University. Hudson Hemp, downstate more, they received a license, and a couple others. Mark Privatera upstate, growing just different stuff. Small acreage. Some were growing for high cannabinoid plants. A couple were, but mostly still for fiber and grains anymore. Still had a plot. Cornell started to grow some more plots. And then in June of that year, would have been June 2017, all of a sudden Governor Cuomo announced that he was going to sign into law a bill that Donald Pardo had been pushing that will completely open it up for commercial growth. So lift the cap on licenses from 10 to unlimited, and allow for growers to enter in on the commercial side and have their research, have to do with marketing. And so that was during that summer, and I think a lot of people saw that, ramped up, and then last year applied and became part of the program. I think there's 52 CBD growers last year. There was 118 total licenses, I believe, between growers and processors. And there's a lot of success, a lot of failure. We grew on 6 farms last year, about 25 acres, harvested about 10 of those, and, had a lot of problems with the moisture last year, the rain, getting things harvested in time, getting crop harvested in time across the different fields, bad seed, just a lot of issues that New York is definitely trying to work through. And so New York, I think, has been a little slower to open the program. For instance, in Colorado, if you apply, they have hundreds and hundreds of growers. They're growing tens of thousands of acres. Kentucky the same. Last year, I think officially New York grew 3,000 acres. Now, the way these states report their acreage is a little ridiculous, right? So I don't know how many people applied for a license this year, but they ask you how many acres you're going to grow. I know for all applications that we submitted or farmers that we worked with, said, take that acreage you're going to grow, multiply it by 3 just in case. Why not, right? So Kentucky, they take that and they tell people, put as much acreage as you possibly would ever plant on. Or maybe you got to rotate, whatever. So they take that number, and Kentucky said that they've got 40,000 acres growing this year. 40,000 acres are not going to be growing this year. There's absolutely no way. Same thing in Colorado. So these numbers get inflated. But New York State, I think, had 3,000 acres licensed last year. Probably going to triple that this year, close to 10,000. But the pilot program was run by the plant industry division at Ag Markets. Plant industry division is pretty small. They regulate nurseries, and basic tests. So they aren't really equipped or have the staff to run a program that has the possibility to be, one of the top. This year will be one of the top 10 value crops in New York State. Hemp will be. It's a possibility of being in the top 5. They didn't really have that ability to regulate, and they still don't. So the pilot program has basically been, you come in, you tell us what your research focus is in one paragraph. Let us know 3 weeks before you want to harvest. We may or may not send an inspector out there. We may or may not know when that inspector is going to be able to get there. And by the way, that inspector also needs to go and continue doing inspections in nurseries and, doing stops on 86 and 81 for spiral lanternfly and some other invasives. So it's just basically been self-regulated. And, I don't know if the state ag markets, they're not very comfortable with that. People are growing all over the place, and you've got some people that are maybe reporting their harvest, maybe not. This whole issue of hot crops. So in the section 7606, it defines hemp. And so that definition of hemp is very important because that was not there at all. Previously, the definition of hemp fell under two pieces of legislation. 1947, the Cannabis Tax Act, the Marijuana Tax Act, right? So Marijuana Tax Act defines marijuana as cannabis sativa. So now all cannabis is lumped into that category. They used that definition in 1972 for the Controlled Substances Act. So now hemp is listed as a controlled substance as of 1972. Doesn't matter whether it has THC or not. There's no definition of that. 2014, they had this definition of hemp as cannabis sativa L and all its derivatives, growing or not, that is under 0.3% delta-9 THC, right? So now they've created a separate definition of cannabis in 2014 in law and statute that defines hemp, industrial hemp, and only looking at delta-9 THC as a definition. So when someone asks me what's the difference between hemp and marijuana, the only difference is this legal definition, right? It's the same plant. If you're growing for CBD, it's indistinguishable from female marijuana grows. And on the hemp side, the genetics are so diverse, all the way from fiber varietal, grow to 15, 20 feet high, to in some places in the world, to grain and that have been bred for protein content, and then you've got what we call these hemp, basically hybrid hemp marijuana strains, right? So what they've done is they've taken a marijuana strain that's already low in THC. They breed it with a landrace strain, a hemp strain that has almost no THC. Keep breeding it down, get a high CBD level, and it's below that 0.3, right? The problem with that is that CBD and THC rise together. No one really knows. There's no proportion for that, right? It depends on the plant, depends on the genetics. It depends on the phenotype within that genetic, right? So you have this definition of delta-9 THC. And if you test any plant early enough, you're going to be below 0.3% THC. If you test it late enough, it's going to go over. If you're going to have a strain that's above 8% CBD, it's always going to end up over 0.3% THC if you decarboxylate. So that's this definition of delta-9 THC. Because in the plant, even high marijuana strains that you can get in Colorado on the market, 20-30% THC, most of that THC is not delta-9 THC in the plant. It's not delta-9 until you decarboxylate it and change it from its acidic form, THCA, into delta-9 THC. So if the law reads delta-9 THC, but you have THCA, which is then converted into delta-9 THC, which you have to do if you test it, and the question becomes, if you have a crop in September and October that's 0.15% delta-9 THC, but 0.6% THCA, what number are you going with? Are you combining it? Are you decarboxylating it, testing it, combining the two? Conversion's like 0.75, right? And so I think the state last year really struggled with that. So what they did, when you submitted your test and they came in and tested, they gave you your THC, Delta 9 THC, and your THCA level. We tested pretty early, tested at the end of August. Got our inspector out there, and we're completely under. From what I understand, about 20 and 25% of the crops they tested were what we call high, right? So they were above Delta 9, depends on when they tested it. So after that season, we had a lot of talks on the national level, from some of the lobbyists on the national level, about getting hemp completely removed from controlled substances list and taking this research aspect out of it. I mean, it's been 4 years, and the hemp industry was growing. It reached $1 billion in total product, and to step forward, we really need to get out of the guise of research. So they got into the Farm Bill, going with the same definition of hemp, but codifying it not in the guise of research, but actually amending the Controlled Substances Act, amending, I believe it was a 1940s Agriculture and Markets Law that then considered hemp to be a agricultural commodity, and stuck with this 0.3% THC definition. Now, additionally, they wanted states to submit a plan to regulate hemp. And they said, if you're a state and you don't want to regulate hemp, you don't have to. You can be more restrictive, but not less restrictive. Kind of confusing, right? Then the Farm Bill got held up because of SNAP and food stamps, right? So completely different aside from hemp. So we didn't really have a Farm Bill that passed until the end of the year. Farm Bill passes, all of a sudden, hemp's legal. Now it's not, doesn't have to be under the guise of research. And New York State, which had been waiting all fall to see if this was going to pass, now has to figure out, okay, how are we going to regulate hemp in general next year? And so before the Farm Bill passed, the Farm Bill passed on December 22nd, right? December 20th? Yeah. So 3 weeks before that, December 1st, New York State opens up the license period for growers and processors and says, we're going to continue to work with our pilot program instead of, count on this passage. So they open it up and they close it on December 24th. Right? And the 3-week open period. And people applied and got in. Same application as the year before, essentially. A little bit changes in the research partner agreement. And they said, okay, instead of waiting for these regulations to come down and submitting our plan and waiting, we're going to pack all of the regulations for the industry into the research partner agreement, the agreement you sign with the state to become a partner of theirs for research, for processing, not for growers, but for processing. So they pack in regulations relating to labeling, good manufacturing practices for any processing without actually defining who a processor is and whether a product manufacturer is a processor if they're using raw ingredients, saying that you can only source New York hemp, and just packed with all these regulations that only apply to someone who is doing extraction and processing. So any other product that comes into New York State from Colorado or wherever doesn't have to adhere to these guidelines because those aren't, processors that have to follow the research partner agreement. So now with the research partner agreement, at the same time they opened the licenses, right? I remember I was hopping on a plane from Charlotte and I read this on the plane and I said, oh my God, this is going to kill the New York hemp industry before it even really starts. And the reason why is because anyone who's a processor has to conform to GMP standards, which is good manufacturing practices, right? But there's a lot of GMPs. There's a lot of good manufacturing practices that you'd have to adhere to depending on what products you make. So New York State decides, well, we're gonna say all these hemp products are dietary supplements. So that's CFR 111. CFR 111 is it's one step below pharmaceutical grade. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to be compliant with that. And they also said you need to tell us in your application, if you're a processor, how you can be compliant with this and a name of a third-party auditor that can come and audit for a CFR 111. And I don't know of anyone in the state that can do that. So I think a lot of people just Googled third-party auditors put their name on that license application. And then they passed the Farm Bill in New York State. And now they're like, oh man, we just passed all these regulations. We have all these regulations packed in the RPA. What are we going to do? Fortunately, they kind of got a break because then the government gets shut down for a month and the USDA doesn't go to work. So instead of the USDA immediately saying, okay, this is what we're going to expect from states to regulate the hemp industry for this growing season, they said nothing. You couldn't even reach them. If you called the DEA office and said, hey, do I still need my import permit for seeds from growing grain? They didn't answer. Or they said, well, I don't know. Our colleagues in Washington aren't at work, so we have no idea. So New York State made a decision and said, we are going to just completely go forward with what we have done the past 2 years, and we're going to use the RPA, the Research Partner Agreement, as the regulation for the industry. At the same time, the governor decides in his State of the State address to announce that we're going to legalize marijuana. Not only are we going to legalize marijuana, but we're going to create a whole new agency called the Office of Cannabis Management. And in the Office of Cannabis Management, and in these regulations that was packed into the executive budget, 300 pages of statute in the budget. We're going to define hemp in two different ways now. Industrial hemp for grain, fiber, stuff that Steve processes, and cannabinoid hemp, or hemp cannabis, they call it, right? And that's any hemp that's grown for cannabinoids. What I do, right? And this is all going to go into the Office of Cannabis Management, and the Office of Cannabis Management is going to use tax revenue from marijuana, this projected $250 million worth of tax revenue year one, to pay for inspectors to go out there and regulate the hemp industry so that we don't have to tax hemp. So we were going through it, and it was a very ambitious framework, something that I think was moving the right direction, but still had some issues to work out. And the biggest issue goes back to this research partner agreement and this unclear definition of a processor, right? So we work with companies that make hemp products. Example I use all the time is Shamrock Creek. They make goat milk soaps and lotions, right? And so they make a couple topicals using broad spectrum CBD from New York grown product, right? Now, the question is whether she is a processor. So she's taking a raw ingredient and putting it into a product. If she's a processor, doesn't matter if she has a commercial kitchen or any sort of licensing to make the rest of her products. Now she has to conform to CFR 111. Well, she's out of business. No way she's going to be able to conform to that. No way. So the way I saw it was that you're a processor and you're making products here. You're not only paying the farmer for his crop, but now you're charging the companies that are selling the products for what we call white labeling services, right? So actually packing the products because you have the capital to conform to these, standards. So we brought this, to the governor's office and to Donald Pardo and said, you're going to kill the industry and you're going to add a cost to New York products that's going to make them uncompetitive, right? So they listened and they said, you're absolutely right. We'll carve out a section for product manufacturers. Product manufacturers will have a completely different set of regulations. My argument is that they shouldn't have to adhere to any different regulations than they have with their regular products. So we were able to get that in there. There was an on-premise consumption license for marijuana. There was an ability for a micro licensee to grow and sell and, really take advantage of marijuana, hemp, medical, we call it adult use of recreational marijuana. And working with the governor's office, we were able to get a nice bill called the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, which is really just small business, small farm focused. Unfortunately, as the budget passed, Nassau County, pretty much, and was able to tank that bill. They were able to tank that. They were able to get marijuana out of there because they could not agree on where the money would go. They wanted the money for the MTA. The governor said no way, and it didn't get passed. So Ag and Markets is sitting there like, oh man, this is our way out. This is our four-man office now. It doesn't have to regulate a $1 billion industry. We got this Office of Cannabis Management that's going to have, we're saying, 100 employees in there, right? So now they're scrambling saying, how are we going to regulate the industry when we have the FDA, their outgoing commissioner, Scott Gottlieb, comes out 2 weeks ago and says, yeah, it's going to be 3 years before we even have regulation for CBD. And the main issues with that, with the FDA, is that the FDA has 2 drugs that they've approved that has cannabinoids in it. One of them is CBD. It's called Epidiolex. And it treats a rare form of seizures called Dravet syndrome. Now, because they approved it, and as GW Pharmaceuticals is one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. They're based out of London, and they work with all these big pharmaceutical companies here. They even have a weird shady agreement with like Scott's, the soil, and some big money being thrown around there in Washington. And so the FDA says, well, if you don't have FDA approval, you can't sell CBD products because that's illegal. That's an adulterated, mislabeled product. You're adding an ingredient that is not allowed in the food supply in the United States. You may ask, well, how come I can go online and pick from 100 different CBD brands? And that's because those CBD brands said, well, the 2014 Farm Bill allows me to study the market research of hemp and its derived products. That's what I'm doing. FDA is not really sure. They sent some warning letters out to some companies making health claims on their websites. And, in the Farm Bill, they almost a poison pill in the Farm Bill language for hemp. So they say nothing in this bill will change the way the FDA regulates hemp, right? Or CBD products at all. Basically opens the door for them to just give a gift to the pharmaceutical companies. After pharmaceutical companies for decades and decades say, oh, there's no medicinal value for cannabis. So now New York State's looking at it and going, okay, how do we preempt the FDA for some decision they're going to make in the next 2-3 years, right? And so the way they see it is, well, let's roll hemp into our cannabis program, raise the THC. So now it's not hemp anymore at all. It's cannabis until it's then brought down to that 0.3% level. Now this product is allowed, right? So if the CRTA was able to pass in the budget, which it didn't, there would have been a massive incongruency between New York state law and the federal law, which in my opinion would have given New York the largest competitive advantage out of any state in the country for the market of CBD products, because they still kept this provision that said if you're a processor in New York, you had to buy New York hemp. If you have to buy, and if you're going to make a product that's compliant with our program here in New York and take advantage of one of the greatest markets in the world, New York City, you're going to have to be a processor in New York. So, I thought that's beautiful. As I just got back from Colorado 2 weeks ago and was talking to some of my buddies with some large farms there, and they're telling me that they're looking at $10 to $15 a pound contracts, right? It's about a third of what contracts we're able to line up here in New York and what should be being paid, right? And so now with that not passing, the governor's office and the assembly and the state senate, they're back to work on getting a marijuana bill passed. But now they're saying not the CRTA, but we want the MRTA, which is the Marijuana Regulation and Tax Act. Now the MRTA makes no mention of the OCM and makes absolutely no mention of hemp at all. So you're going to legalize marijuana, you're going to create the OCM, and then hemp is going to continue to be with the Pine Industry Division. So that doesn't really make sense to us, right? And as an industry, I don't think that really works. So what we're trying to do is we're pushing for legislation that will consider all products that are derived from hemp food and an acceptable food additive, not a dietary supplement necessarily, and definitely not a pharmaceutical. In that case, small business is able to market a safe product that's been extracted according to good manufacturing practices, so you know that there's no residual solvents, no heavy metals, none of that. It's been tested for full panel. And now they can take that raw ingredient and make whatever value-add product they want, put their special branding on it, and sell it in New York State and have a massive advantage. So we're trying to get that passed. And what the governor's office said to me yesterday was, we think it's unacceptable that one county in Long Island was able to drive the conversation in the budget when we have a massive benefit and possibly a massive economic windfall for farmers and businesses in upstate New York, similar to, what's happened with the craft beverage industry. And I said, Axel, you're absolutely right. This is not a downstate conversation. It's an upstate conversation. So, as we move forward with legislation here and we try to get something done by the end of session, I would just say, pay attention, talk to your local legislators, your local county executives, and let them get in the press. Now, the only county executive that had anything good to say about the CRTA was our county executive, Jason Gardner in Broome County. He came out and said, why would I opt out of tax revenue when it's going to be all around Broome County anyways? Someone can go to Tioga County and grow or purchase marijuana. Why should Broome County be left out of the tax revenue? It's the Democrat Chronicle ran this big article. They're talking to the Nassau County executives. I think they talked to someone in Putnam County, a couple other downstate, right? And Jason Gardner gets this tiny little blurb at the bottom of the article about, we welcome cannabis industry here, tax revenue, and jobs, and economic development in Broome County. So what we're trying to figure out is how this conversation is, brought to upstate, and upstate can really push it forward. And I think what's most important is that, regardless of party affiliation or politics in general, is that we see this as it's coming. Massachusetts has legalized marijuana, right? And people go across the state line all the time, and they're giving their tax revenue to Massachusetts. And how can this be good for farmers? How can it be good for small businesses in upstate New York? And how we frame that conversation to put pressure on the legislators, in the state Senate and the state Assembly. So, we have some ideas, but we'll see. And it really comes down to individual farmers and business owners calling their assembly members and calling their state senators and saying, where do you stand on this? What do you think about this bill? Because this is what I think, and I think that it could be a good opportunity to expand my operations and diversify what I do here. So our 20 farms that we work with, not one of them has not let one of them get rid of any other revenue stream they have in that farm. The hemp market's going up and down, and I don't really know where it's going in the next few years. What they're doing is they're adding another revenue source, which is key, right? So we have 3 dairies that we work with, and they're doing 2, 3 acres, 4 acres. But now they have another revenue stream to help because, they're not making any money selling milk. And, some organic vegetable farmers, they're able to add this portfolio because organic vegetable farmers do very well usually anyways, especially if they have a direct path to market. So the way we see it is, New York will never compete on production numbers with Colorado. Will never compete with Oregon. Just won't for acreage, right? But what New York has is New York City. Colorado, Oregon, they don't have anything like New York City, right? And the amount of money and, just the way New York drives a lot of different markets. So the state really wants to do this like craft beverage, where it's saying, you have to use ingredients, and hopefully they can regulate it better than they do the beer industry, but you have to use ingredients sourced from New York. You have to work with a New York farmer. And, don't bring your cheap product in from out of state and try to flood our market. And that's what we support. It's not necessarily protectionist, and it's not necessarily saying that you can't bring your product in, but if it is, it needs to be up to our standards, and there's going to have to be some tax on it, because the New York product is going to cost more, because it costs more to grow, harvest, dry the product in general. So that has to be represented on the final shelf. You can have a $6 more unit on the shelf. It just doesn't work, right? So I think that, the state understands that, and the state's moving more towards, okay, let's help the industry along. Let's allow farmers to make good money. Right now, if you, are growing hemp CBD and you're successful and you have a good contract and, processor that you're working with very well, you can make up to $35,000, $40,000 an acre. And how long will that last? Probably not very long. But what we stress to the state and also our congressional representatives is the price will go down, but the cost will stay the same, especially the regulatory costs. So the regulatory costs should not be someone's going to have to bear a lot of those costs, and inspectors. Can be growth. Southern tier kind. These big companies that come in New York, they should have to bear those costs, not the farmer and the small business. So that's kind of my run through of what is going on. And if anyone has any questions, then it's usually better, and maybe we'll get a lot more out there. So what I heard yesterday at the Capitol, they were looking at a 75% chance of passing by the end of session. The 75% by the end of June. Very similar bill to what was proposed in the budget. The problem is now what they call in Albany a phantom bill. So it's a bill that's going to cost money, that has a fiscal note, that has no way to pay for it. That's the problem. In the budget, you can count the revenues from tax money, and then you can allocate funds to start this Office of Cannabis Management and start the program and everything like that. And now they have no way to pay for it. So I think it's going to get passed, and by some weird fashion, won't be a way to pay for it. But I think we're still going to have a year or two before you actually see rollout, before you can actually go to a store and purchase illegal marijuana. Mm-hmm. $750,000. Southern tier house. Mm-hmm. So that money has never been paid. Mm-hmm. Michael Falcone? Yep. For processors or growers? Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. 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 Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have a grower in Delaware County, Bovina. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So well, let me address the first part. Yeah, absolutely. Let me address the money thing because that's something that we work with. And let me say that we are large and we have a lot of representation in the state, and we're 100% representing small farmers and small processors and small companies. That $750,000 that was earmarked out of the state budget for Southern Tier Hemp has never been paid to them because Southern Tier Hemp did not deliver on it. Southern Tier Hemp is not Southern Tier Hemp, they're Gen Canna, right? And it's run locally by Michael Falcone, real estate guy, lives in Skinny Islands, right? Good friend of the governor. I understand that relationship is a little more chilly now, right? They did not deliver on what they said they're going to do. They backed out of a couple acquisitions of property in the Binghamton area, and now they bought the former Gannett building in Johnson City, right? That's all reimbursable payments. So until they do what they say they're going to do, they won't get that money. There was $5 million awarded for research. Most of that went to Cornell, and Larry Smart and his team is doing an excellent job over there, right? Absolutely, right? That was huge. I thought that was no other state has given money to research. The other money had never been awarded. To my understanding, the only person who got RDC funding was Steve. A very small amount to help his operation, his fiber operation in Minnesota. So you're right. And what I told the state straight up, I said, why should any money go to a CBD processor? The margins are insane. If you're a CBD processor coming in here, you make millions and millions of dollars for 60 days of operating, right? So the money should go to farmers to help them get plastic mulch, get it on their fields, move from a field crop to a row crop. And that costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of money for a farmer to get that down, run drip line, fertigate their crop and harvest and then set up an area to dry, right? So that $5 million is pretty much on hold. I don't think any money will be awarded to processors this year besides fiber processors. And that was through REDC, which is a completely separate funding operation, right? In terms of the license process, you're right. It absolutely should be more transparent. We've had our own issues with the state on that. But I think they're trying. So the people that work in the plant industry division, Chris Loge, Tim Sweeney, they're good guys, man. At least, they're all good people and they're trying. They have, I think, spotted lanternfly infestation is one of the biggest problems that they are not facing because they have to deal with hemp. In the wine industry, it's a massive threat to grape crops. So I think that they were looking at a way out. What the state wanted to do is take the tax revenue from marijuana, put in the OCM, allow the OCM to work, right? The real problem, honestly, is downstate legislators. Now, in a good way and a bad way, the Amazon deal blowing up, basically, Governor Cuomo, it infuriated him beyond belief. And that carried into the marijuana discussion because he did not want to give any concessions to downstate. They want all the tax revenue to come back to downstate and to help communities that they claim have been disadvantaged. A lot of the, urban, Latin, Black communities downstate have absolutely been affected negatively through marijuana being illegal. But so has, lower income rural residents in upstate New York. So Donald Pardo was able to slip into the OCM language, is that not only would preferences for licenses for marijuana go to, disadvantaged communities, downstate, but also disadvantaged farmers. Disadvantaged farmer, by definition, was like 50% of your income comes from farming or more, 50% or more comes from farming, and you have, you live in a county that on average is below the federal poverty line by a certain amount, which is pretty much every upstate county, that you have preference on that license. And then the micro licensees, the only way you could be vertical in marijuana was if you had a micro license and you grew and sold on that property. I thought that was the biggest gift to upstate, because that's saying, okay, MedMen can't come in here and just run a vertical operation and sell $20 ace out the door and kill the market. The only people that can do that is people that grow here, so just like a winery, right, or farm brewery. So absolutely, we definitely share your concerns. And so we've formed the New York State Growers and Processors Association. We just actually, are going to be accepting members probably in the next couple of weeks here. It's myself, it's Alan Gandelman from Main Street Farms in Portland, Ben Dobson down at Hudson Hemp. We've retained Senator Altamato's firm for lobbying. Pay a pretty penny for that, but we have a better seat at the table than Jen Cannon, Michael Falcone, or Canopy Growth. And I'll tell you right now that the governor's office is very sympathetic, and they want this to go and help upstate communities. The state had no idea what hemp was when they legalized it and had no idea what they're doing. And that's the big problem. All this money came in, all these promises were made. We're going to do a, $100 million facility in Binghamton. I'll tell you, if you've been around Binghamton 15 years, that sounds pretty attractive. And they rolled the red carpet out. And they didn't know exactly what they were getting into, because these actors had a reputation in the industry in Kentucky and Colorado that was not good. So we were able to raise some of those red flags. And the state right now is not very happy with some of those large actors. I'll tell you that. Mm-hmm. Yep. And cleaner almost. Yeah. So absolutely. And the big thing is the direction consumers are going in the market, right? Consumers are not just happy with the word CBD on their label, but they want to see full spectrum or broad spectrum oil. You cannot hide anything in those oils. Yeah, CO2 extracted, which, people call that solventless. Not solventless, right? CO2 is a solvent, and so is ethanol. If you do the extraction right, you can get a clean oil from both ethanol and CO2. CO2 you really can't run volume through. That's a big problem. But yeah, so the consumer preferences move more towards an oil that is organic, that is pesticide-free, herbicide-free, heavy metal-free, right? And hemp doesn't hide anything. It's a bioaccumulator. They planted hemp at Chernobyl to remediate the soil, did a great job. Well, then you plant here, we could call some Pennsylvania growers all the time, and we won't even entertain it, because you don't know what's in that water system, that water table. Oh yeah. So they're going to isolate. They go to isolate, then they make these products which aren't as effective. So it's very important that as a consumer, if you are spending your hard-earned money on CBD, which is very expensive products, you're buying New York products. There's some great New York products out there, excellent New York products, right? And some good products natural products. I'm good friends with the owner of Bluebird Botanicals. They're a $100 million operation, yet I think they gave away $500,000 of product last month, they were telling me. Just the people that, said, hey, I don't have the money to pay for this product. They do it right. They get a certified organic crop and everything like that. So I think it falls on the consumer. New York State is going to require full panel testing off the line. So you will have to be, have good, clean crop and clean oil. Certified organic does pay a higher price. NOFA is just now starting to certify the crop and the processing, which is big step for NOFA. And a lot of certifiers across the country are not, and they're taking the lead. So, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when we talk about marijuana, greenhouses, controlled environment is really what you need to go for, right? Hemp, the money isn't there to grow it in a greenhouse. You don't get enough sunlight, so you need light assisted. You heat, cool. It's not. You don't get enough canopy space there. We do all our propagates in greenhouse, right? But we get out to the field. So yeah, so you will have some mold problems, but when you extract it, you shouldn't have any issues with that. Yep. Absolutely.